What do you say, everybody? With Kyle Henderson, I'm Mick Gillispie. Welcome to the Bama Insider YouTube channel on a Sunday night. We're going to take your calls here shortly. Recap Alabama's 52-24 domination of Tennessee. Okay, maybe not domination, but they did cover the spread, and they beat Tennessee. We're going to talk about that. I know a lot of you guys are ready to sound off and kind of get into what you thought was good, maybe bad, maybe ugly about the game. Make sure you like and subscribe, hit the bell, and we really appreciate you guys hanging out with us here as you always do on a Sunday night. So he's Kyle Henderson, the managing editor of Bama Insider. I'm Mick Gillispie. Kyle, let's get right into this. We didn't see you last night on the postgame show, which we always love talking to you. So I'm really curious to know what you thought about the game the game last night. Give me your good and bad and ugly against Tennessee.
Well, I think for starters, you start with the good, right? I think number one, Alabama won. And I think, anytime that you get a W in the SEC, it's very positive. I know the expectations are extremely high. 52-24 after the game, Nick Saban said that he was pleased. So if it's good enough for a victory for Nick Saban, I think it's good enough for, the rest of the Alabama fans. I think for the good, you look to Bryce Young. I mean, his play, 31-43, 2 touchdowns, but his ability to run. Everybody's been asking for Bryce to run the football, 10 carries, 56 yards. And what is really impressive, and I think the biggest takeaway from this game from his standpoint, just talking about Bryce Young, is his ability to extend plays. It's really incredible. I think that he has just this quick twitch ability, keeps his eyes downfield. He can run the football, as we saw, 2 touchdowns last night, but just really impressed with him. And then the play of Brian Robinson, I mean, he's the bell cow that we knew he was going to be. 26 carries, 109 tough yards, a net of 107 with 3 touchdowns. I thought those guys played really well. I think there's some holes within the offensive line. We're going to talk about the bad in just a second, but I thought from a leadership standpoint, who's going to really step up in this time during crunch time? I thought Bryce Young, Brian Robinson, even John Mechie. I mean, he was targeted 13 times. We're talking in pre-show, 13 times, 11 receptions, 121 yards. So you're starting to see these leaders on the offense really start to emerge as we get to the month of November.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point. I mean, when you talk about targets and someone that we were expecting to be a big part of Alabama's offense, it was John Mechie. In the last 2 weeks, he's starting to emerge as the playmaker, the go-to guy that we thought he would be.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you look at the combination of targets between him and Jameson Williams. Jameson Williams was targeted 12 times. And I think that we are talking, and now we kind of move to the bad of last night. And I think there's a lot to talk about from the offense and defensive side. But Jameson Williams, I think that he is a playmaker. He was targeted 12 times, 6 receptions. He has some drops, and we've continued to see drops from Jameson Williams throughout the entire season. Maybe that's just part of his game, I guess. There's a lot of drops on this team. I continue to see it from all the wide receivers. I haven't really seen this in the past. I saw a big drop from Jaleel Billingsley that I thought would be a touchdown. I saw a drop from Jameson Williams. And then Jameson Williams also fumbled the football too. So you don't like to see that, from any wide receivers. We haven't seen that in the past. And I think when we look to the defensive side of the ball, again, talking about the negatives from last night, really curious to see what the coaching staff saw from the defensive perspective, because we continue to see Alabama in pre-snap formations. They look lost. They look like they're kind of looking, for plays to be called in. And Josh Jobe, I think everybody wants to talk about that. He was just completely beat. But Nick Saban didn't say that was a busted coverage. That was interesting in the post game. He said that, he just didn't understand what the play call was. But then again, when you're lined up, what's your job as a defensive back? It's to guard the wide receiver and not to let him get inside or behind you. And Tillman made a good play, took off, and scored a big touchdown. I thought the wide receivers from Tennessee, they took it to Alabama's corners. We need to see a continued improvement from the secondary. There was the spot play. I think the busted coverage was across the middle of the field where Alabama didn't have a safety in the middle. The guy just runs a simple slant and scores a touchdown. Things like that matter. And when you play better teams down the stretch, that's simply going to beat you. You can't do that against an Ohio State, against a Georgia. You're going to lose games like that. So they really need to tighten up. That's what Nick Saban said. Overall, I thought the offensive line, they did adequate job, but I still think that Bryce is getting too much heat. So I'm curious to see what happens through this bye week and kind of what they build on going into this next kind of stretch of SEC games.
Yeah, good points there. So would you say what would you say the ugly was then?
Oh, just as I just said the ugly. I guess you kind of throw in the ugly part of, having a kick, punt blocked.
Oh yeah.
You got to be perfect on all phases of the game. There was a missed field goal. I get it. It was like a 53-yard attempt or something like that. But if Alabama wants to be elite, if they want to win another championship, you have to be perfect, nearly perfect on all phases of the game, whether that's offense, defense, special teams. And Alabama is clearly not perfect in those phases just yet. Still a lot of football to play, but we're getting down to the later part of the season where, I guess this is the team that we have. So when you look to kind of the course of college football, I know we're going to talk about the favorites later on in the show. Alabama's still right there. They're not perfect, but this team is still 7-1.
Yeah, look, they just leapfrogged Oklahoma in the third in the polls after yesterday. But, just kind of sticking with where we are right here, and you made some great points about the game. You mentioned Nick Saban, and he was, kind of what he said in the postgame press conference. And I thought that he was a lot less critical. And I feel like that's because the team really did struggle in this game, but they won. And to me, and I don't hear your opinion, but to me, I feel like what he's trying to do is keep this team positive because there are some issues there. There are some bad and some ugly, but there's a lot of good too. And he knows to get to where they want to get to, they're going to have to stay very focused.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's because, kind of the leaders, as we're starting to see on this team, are young. Right? They're sophomores. Bryce Young on the offense, William Anderson on the defense. Those guys are just sophomores. So those guys are wearing the leadership tag on this team. And you're right. I think that Coach Saban understands that this team, they might be sophomore. They might be young. I don't even know if they really have an identity yet. Like, what is this team's identity? I don't know. At some point you have to try to get that. I think, but when you look to the second half adjustments, especially on the defensive side, Alabama did a really good job. Whatever they did at halftime, they did a good job. Tennessee only had 10 points in that second half, and they outscored Tennessee 31-10 and kind of pulled away there at the end. So credit to the defense for, they didn't play the best first half, but I thought in the second half they tightened up. And you kind of pair that with what they did against Mississippi State. I do think that they're clearly trying and the athletes are there. Maybe, I don't know, Tennessee, they had a decent scheme, right? They attacked Alabama on the edges. I think they're better than they were last year, if we can say that. But this team isn't perfect. The defense isn't perfect. People still calling for Pete Golding. We have an offensive coordinator hot board. We didn't put it together. The fans did on our board. So nobody likes Pete Golding. Nobody likes Bill O'Brien on the message board. Did you see, Mick? Did you see that kind of intimate photo of Saban and Bryce Young? They're like head to head.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what they're talking about or whatever, but, sharing some sort of moment, maybe Saban was like, this is just, who knows? I don't know. What was your take on that?
I don't know. I think Nick Saban really loves this guy. I think that Bryce Young's another one of these Tua type guys that Saban just enjoys being around. He just likes him. He thinks he's a smart kid. He appreciates the effort. And when Alabama first got Nick Saban, he wasn't known for transcending quarterbacks. Now all of a sudden that's what we see with these guys. And that kind of brings me into my second question. And before I get there, I want to remind all you guys that you're hanging out with us here on the Bama Insider YouTube channel. Like and subscribe. Really, we want you to be a part of this. When you subscribe, when you hit the bell, you'll know when we got videos coming out, and we do stuff every single day. We got all the press conferences on here. We have a great time doing so. As you know, as for those that watch, we're going to have a good time covering Alabama. How far can Bryce Young take this team, Kyle? And I got the picture of the two lovebirds up there, Bryce Young and Nick Saban, right there for you.
Isn't this, aren't we just saying the obvious here? The entire season revolves around Bryce Young, right? This entire team revolves around him, and the success that he's going to have is going to dictate Alabama's future. Maybe him and the Alabama defense, if they can come up with some big time plays down the stretch. But it's really incredible to see what Bryce Young brings. He gets better each week. I really am enjoying what he has from kind of just his intangibles, right? So you look at like the Patty Mahomes, you look at Aaron Rodgers, you look at Kyler Murray, and he's like has different attributes from those guys. Someone said it best, I think, on the post game show. I was reading the comments. Someone said that he's kind of like Steph Curry. I thought that was a great comparison, right? But just on the football field, because he's just like this point guard. He sees the field so well. Guys can come around. He knows he can kind of dodge you. And this guy is balling out. And if John Mechie and these receivers continue to make plays, the only thing that concerns me is like, who's the third wide receiver? If I'm playing Alabama, I am doing everything possible to stop Mechie and Williams. Every single time Bryce Young goes back to throw, he's throwing it to those two guys. That's it. That's all he has really around him. So we keep waiting for this, third wide receiver to emerge. I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah.
I thought it was Trayshawn Holden. He caught a pass. I thought he was going to turn it for a touchdown. The tight ends, Billingsley, man, what's going on there? Everybody knows what's happening with Ajay Hall. He never even played anyways. Javon Baker, we were waiting for him. Where's he been? Cam Latu, at the beginning of the season, he was that tight end, but man, who's the third target? Slade Bolden gets 2 or 3 yards per catch. So it's concerning around him. Now you do have Brian Robinson, you do have Roydell Williams. The offensive line still scares me. I thought Bryce got hit a couple times. The dude is tough. And like Jarvis is saying in the comment box, maybe it's Trayshawn Holden. I think him and Bryce Young are actually roommates. So you got to think that there's some, those guys have some sort of cohesiveness. But man, somebody has to step up other than Mechie or Williams. Because if I know that Alabama's only two options are Jamison Williams and John Mechie, and I'm not qualified to be a defensive coordinator, imagine what defensive coordinators are thinking.
Yeah, that's a good point. And Alabama went out and got all of those, 4 and 5 star receivers last year in their signing class, but no one must be taking the ball and running with it, or maybe Nick Saban's just being patient. It's hard to tell right now, but you're right. There's not really a third option. I would say, I don't even know. Like you said, I don't even know who that third guy, Holden, maybe.
Yeah. I think he looked really good against Mississippi State. I was like, why hasn't he been playing?
Yeah.
But, then again, I think he had 2 receptions yesterday or 1. So maybe we'll continue to see more of him. I hope we do.
Yeah, well, if you're throwing the ball to Mechie that many times, and you got to get Williams the ball. Although he does some electric stuff, he doesn't catch it as much as he's got drops. And that's something that we just didn't see with the Four Horsemen. They didn't drop the ball, which was always amazing to me. Now they're back to receivers that drop it, and you feel like those drops are really going to hurt them at some really important time down the stretch. And we're about to get into those games that are remaining. So I'd say 3 out of 4 games, it wouldn't even matter.
Yeah, you can't drop the football. If Bryce Young's putting it there and you can catch it, if it's hitting your hands, you should catch it. And we didn't see any drops from Henry Ruggs, Jerry Jeudy, Jalen Watt. I know we can't compare, certain people, but the fact of the matter is, if you agreed in the comment box, have you ever seen more drops from Alabama's wide receiving unit? I haven't.
Well, I have, but it wasn't with Nick Saban as head coach.
Before there was the internet.
Yeah, right. Before iPhones. When Tennessee used to beat Alabama, which has been 15 straight times, right? So Alabama knocks off Tennessee, and they have the week off. And here's the remaining schedule. Let's go over this. We got LSU, New Mexico State, and Arkansas. They're to get it backwards. Is it LSU, Arkansas, then New Mexico State, and then down to Auburn? So that's the schedule of remaining games. I'm looking at it, Kyle, and I feel like Alabama will roll until Auburn. That's a big question mark to me. What do you think?
Yeah, I think I'd sent you, the schedule. So I'll just put it on the screen so everyone can have a point of reference for that. Get to that. There it is. Yeah, it's just better to have something to look at. So when you kind of look at the schedule right there, Alabama's schedule is always so favorable. Honestly, when has Alabama played a really difficult schedule? For the last 5 years. They don't. I mean, look at this back end schedule. Okay, I mean, yeah, it was tough going to A&M. Then you have Mississippi State. That's not difficult. It's just down the road. It's like 60 minutes from here, 90 minutes, whatever. Then they're open, right? Then they got LSU at home. They got New Mexico State at home. They got Arkansas at home, and then they drive to Auburn. We've talking, pre-show or earlier today about Alabama and Auburn. Bo Nix is going to play like Tom Brady with Kyler Murray mixed in that game. He won't miss. He'll go, 28-31. He does like these crazy things. Remember that when Bo Nix first beat Alabama, I've never seen so many throws that were just lucky, that were just like you couldn't even explain it because that's just what he does. But I think Alabama will take it to LSU. Arkansas will drop back. So Brian Robinson, if you're out there and playing DraftKings, make Brian Robinson your captain for that Arkansas game because Brian Robinson will probably rush for 300 yards and 7 touchdowns. And then that Auburn game, who knows? I mean, every single year I feel like Alabama's going to take it to Auburn, and then you just get into that game and just not sure what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough one. This team hasn't played well on the road, and they definitely have some weaknesses. I mean, we kind of saw it last night in the first 3 quarters, but LSU, awful against Ole Miss. Arkansas doesn't have the horses. New Mexico State's like a tune-up. and then you got the Iron Bowl, which it really concerns me. But it doesn't concern, obviously, the nation because the new poll came out. We talked about this for a second earlier, but Alabama actually jumps ahead of Oklahoma, who struggled against Kansas yesterday, to 3rd in the poll. And they're ahead of teams that have not lost a game yet.
Yes, I'm going to bring that up as well. Let me bring that up. Tony had the actual polls. So let's see. Here we go. Okay, so here we go. So you got Georgia. So you got the coaches poll on the left and AP on the right. Georgia 7-0, clearly, and they got all the votes, and rightfully so. Then you got Cincinnati. I don't know. I want to get your take on that, Mick, as well, because, you look at Cincinnati and, they barely beat Navy. Navy only has 1 win. It's like, I don't get, Cincinnati, look, what they did. And I think like them beating Notre Dame was like, they're going to, put that team in the Hall of Fame for beating Notre Dame. And it's like, Notre Dame is like, they're not good. I know they beat USC, but USC is not good either. We got like, I think you got like disconnected or something.
Yeah, I got it.
All right, so you can take care of that. But, Cincinnati is like, they're not good. Jerome Ford is good, and the quarterback is good, and their defense is good. But where would they be if they played like SEC schedule? I'm not buying it. I mean, if you barely beat Navy, that doesn't mean anything to me. Alabama, their only loss to Texas A&M on the road. It wasn't a good loss. It's not like they got drubbed. They lost by 3 points. I remember Texas A&M.
Thank you for calling Call-In Studios host and call screener line.
Sorry, Kyle, I'm
Please
trying
enter
to
your
get this
show or meeting
connecting.
number and.
All right, so I get it. Set it up, Mick, and I put you on mute. I finished my thought. So then you have Oklahoma. Oklahoma loses. They almost lose every single
You did
game.
not enter a number. Goodbye.
Mick, why don't you take care of that, and I'll take care of this on this side. All right. So what I was saying is Oklahoma, I mean, every single game, even if you rewind to the first game that they played at Tulane, which was supposed to be in Louisiana, they almost lost that game. I know they switched quarterbacks, and look, that quarterback is a baller. Caleb Williams, I mean, that guy has everything that you want in a quarterback, especially in today's, college football era, especially the way that they run their system. They're 8-0, but the back end of their schedule, they still have to play Baylor, Iowa State, Oklahoma State, and they have to play. If they win those games, they still have to play in the Big 12 championship. So I think they're going to lose maybe twice. Then you have Ohio State. Now, I think Ohio State, and when you kind of look to the Big 10, this is going to be interesting because as you can see, Ohio State 6-1, Michigan 7-0, and then Michigan State is also 7-0. So I believe Michigan and Michigan State play this coming week. It's going to be interesting test for Jim Harbaugh. I do not feel that Michigan has enough offense to beat Ohio State. So I think kind of moving down the road, it's going to be Ohio State in the Big Ten championship. Their only loss is to Oregon. I know that, people feel that, Oregon might be there just because of the Pac-12 or whatever, but, they lost. They nearly lost again to UCLA, and then they almost lost to Cal before that. So I think Alabama has a real shot. Do they have to beat Georgia to get into the championship? Well, they first have to win the remainder of their games. We're talking rat poison right now. But if they were, and if Alabama gets there and they play Georgia close, who's to say that they're still not one of the best 4 teams? Because I think Cincinnati, their resume is never going to hold up. And I think that Oklahoma is going to lose 2 more times. And I think that Ohio State's loss to Oregon is ugly. So maybe Ohio State, Georgia, Alabama, and then somebody else.
Look, I love the fact that Cincinnati stayed at number 2, right? I mean, there's such an interesting story to me. I mean, you brought it up, and SMU is also winning, and that kind of is their last like really big game. But you're right, they barely got by Navy. I was looking at this scenario though, and kind of give me your opinion on this, but this is crazy, right? Say Cincinnati wins out, Oklahoma wins out, Michigan beats Michigan State, beats Ohio State, right? They went out. And then Alabama beats Georgia. Could you imagine Georgia? Wouldn't that be typical Georgia luck where they get left out of the college football playoff?
I mean, it's really, I mean, I keep telling people keep asking or pretending that Georgia's won like 4 championships in a row. I mean, they're like, Georgia's everyone that we want to be. Georgia's like the team that we want to be. And I'm like, you mean you don't want to win a championship since the 1980s? It's like, yeah. Alabama is still winning the championship. They just won a championship last year. A couple years. I've lived here for 5 years, and I've covered a national championship every year but one, right? Every single year but one. So I'm confident that, look, I don't know if this team has the complete horses to go all the way. I think there's still a lot of football to be played, but look, Alabama, they're not perfect, but they're still right there.
Were you surprised that they moved up in the poll after they struggled against Tennessee, or do you think a lot of the writers and voters just see the final score and they're like, oh, they won 52-24? I mean, they don't realize that it was a pretty tough game.
I don't know. I think they realize that Cincinnati, barely beating Navy, that's just terrible. I mean, I'm going to talk about that every single time we talk about the shows now. And then Oklahoma, Kansas was literally taking it to them. And I know that Tennessee had a little bit of momentum on Alabama, but did you ever feel that Alabama was going to lose that game? I didn't.
Yeah, I was worried for a little bit during the first half, but
yeah, because you follow Alabama and you know that they've been trailing twice since in the last 10 years. So anytime something the clouds come out, you get a little scared. But come on, there's just this team still has enough in the tank to get to where they want to be. Is my point.
Yeah, no doubt. But wouldn't that be a funny scenario though if it came to the SEC championship game and you had this pile of unbeatens, and then that game was not just because the assumption right now is that Georgia is going to win out, and then if Alabama is going to have to beat them twice, right? Mm-hmm. But I don't know. I mean, yeah, that's probably the scenario, but you got a lot of unbeaten teams in there. Wake Forest. What about Wake Forest?
Oh, yeah. Wake Forest is climbing the tree. They scored 70 points or something like that. I think, let's see. Michigan State. Yeah, Wake Forest is up there. They're ranked, higher than Texas A&M. SMU's up there, and Texas San Antonio, they are also 8-0.
Yeah, that was surprising to me.
State is up there too, San Diego State.
I know. But I just was looking at this pile of unbeatens, and I was thinking, what if, I want to be the first one to say that Georgia might lose and not make it, which would be great. Well, any final thoughts before we start taking some calls?
No, man. You guys call into the show. We'll be back this coming week. Is a little bit different because Alabama is on an open schedule. So we will hear from Nick Saban tomorrow, not during his noon presser, but we will be hearing from Nick Saban. He's at an event in Birmingham, so we will have coverage of that. Still have Monday night quarterback and a couple of other things going, this week. So pretty much business as usual, and we'll continue to keep you posted right here on Bama Insider. So you guys call on the show, talk with Mick, and I'll catch you guys soon. Thanks for having me, Mick. It looks like StreamYard has a new feature too. Looks like you can kind of pop yourself down here. It's pretty cool. So
look at that.
Yeah, these guys are always killing it, man.
Yeah, love that. All right, cool. Yeah, we got a bunch of calls lined up. Thanks, Kyle. Great thoughts there. Appreciate it. All right, let's go to the phone lines. And before we do that, make sure you guys give us a thumbs up, a like, and subscribe as you hang out on the Bama Insider YouTube channel. Mick Gillispie and Kyle Henderson on a Sunday night. And let's get right into it. Who's this and where are you calling from?
Hey, it's Robert from Mobile.
What's up, Robert?
Hey, regarding Georgia's schedule and Georgia, the assumption is made that Georgia's going to win out because, they played exceptional football all season long. And the people they're playing against play much less than exceptional football all season long. The one that's left on the schedule. So that's, that's the reason why for the assumption that Georgia's going to win out. And if they only have one loss, Georgia's still in, especially with the losses to the SEC championship game. They'll still make the playoff. It could be really tough for the committee this year, though, because it could be one of the toughest they've ever had. If some of these, if the unbeatens are teams that, come on, Wake Forest against Ohio State. No, Wake Forest is not a better team than Ohio State, and no matter what, if they win all of the ACC. Of course, Cincinnati is not a better team than a 2-loss Alabama, or a 2-loss Ohio State.
Right.
So what do you do in these circumstances? That's when you really test. Okay, are you really going to go to the best teams, or are you going to go to more deserving teams? Which is why the expanded playoff fixes all these things. You get both the best teams and the deserving teams in there. So everything is fixed with expanded playoff. You have to make changes on how the schedule runs during the regular season. But that's why I'm always for this 1-12-team playoff. It fixes everything. Then you get your Cincinnati's in. Then you get your 2-loss Alabama's in. They can go ahead and run the rest of the schedule or run their playoff. You get all that. It gets fixed with a 12-team playoff. But yeah, if a Georgia wins, so if they only have one loss, they're in, regardless of if the loss is in the regular season, which I highly doubt, or if the loss is in the SEC championship game, which I hope it is, they're in. And Alabama, 2 losses, maybe not, and it would be unfortunate because a 2-loss Alabama team is still way better than 99% of the teams in college football. And that's the problem with the playoffs the way it is right now with just the 4 teams. It makes it interesting and tougher, but you don't get the best teams or the teams that deserve a shot, like the Cincinnati. That's the fair system, which is why I'm always for it. I was listening to Tennessee people complain about that fumble Bryce Young did on the end zone. It's like, okay, he recovered the ball, so
yeah. What's the argument there, Robert? I agree with you. Like, we watched it over and over again, and then I was like, well, he recovered the fumble in the end zone, so what's it matter?
Yeah, I'm not understanding what they're complaining about because they just say no. That's just what they show us all the referees bias against for Alabama during the whole game, and they all started. We never got to see. One thing the guys on the commentator could do is to point out if they see it or not, a false start, so people can say, okay, yeah, it's fair, or you have a legitimate gripe. Okay, it was unfair. Sometimes they don't show the false start. But the one that O.J. Howard supposed to have done in that Iron Bowl way back when, I have yet to see it. that pushed Alabama back. I have yet to see that false start. But okay, it would be nice if the commentators would point that out every now and then. But it's I fully expect Alabama to still run the rest of the schedule. I'm just not nervous about Auburn this year in the Iron Bowl because the team will be more dialed in, and they'll and Nick Saban's going to want that curse hanging over his head about not winning in Jordan Hare Stadium. He's going to want that game really, really bad. He'll have almost 2 weeks to prepare for it. I know he wants us to believe he's going to be prepared for that game before the Iron Bowl rigorously, but we know that won't be the case. You are right about now the emergence of a third receiver. I think it'll be Holden, maybe the third wide receiver. I'm not giving up on Latu and Billingsley getting it together in this late in the season. Billingsley, those alligator arms, though, guy, you want to go to the NFL, you got to show that you'll catch it, even though you know you're going to take a hit. You better start. I think he's going to have to start showing that, and hope, and I believe he will. Across the middle, you're going to take a hit, but you're going to catch it anyway. And I think they'll get it in the gear. We'll start getting the two-headed monster we're hoping we're going to see from the tight end position. But right now it's definitely. Georgia is the standard. I know everybody's saying, well, they're just not the world beaters. They look like Alabama with Greg McElroy quarterback, with A.J. McCarron quarterback. A high-powered defense that won't let the game get away from you, and the offense that, as long as defense keeps it close, the offense will eventually find enough scores to win the game. And that's what Georgia looks like. And Alabama has shown vulnerability in spots that a team like Georgia, an even like Georgia, can keep us from getting 30 points. I think that game, I keep saying, that game's coming down to who gets 30 points. If we get 30 points, we win. If they get 30 points, they win. And I think right now, I think Georgia is more capable of keeping our offense from getting 30 points than our defense is from keeping them from getting 30 points. That's why they're going to have to improve to change that.
Yeah, look, I still feel like if there's a team that can beat Georgia, it'll be Alabama. I just don't know that Georgia's offense is going to be as tough for Alabama to defend as, Tennessee or Texas A&M, which were both pretty good. Same thing with Ole Miss, which Alabama did an excellent job dealing with, and Florida. But when you eliminate the turnovers and the special teams mistakes, the defense was not good against Texas A&M, but they could have won the game. I just don't know that Georgia's is explosive. So, if they don't run straight over Alabama, I would think that, that Alabama would have a shot at them. I think that Georgia is they're probably hoping they don't see Alabama. Also, just because of the way that things have gone down, the last couple times the teams have played.
No, I don't know. There's no doubt. At this point, I believe, and especially in the playoff, the only two teams capable of beating Alabama or Georgia is Alabama or Georgia. I don't think any other team is Ohio State is creeping up. So maybe they've improved enough. Yeah, it's hard to tell when you're playing terrible Big 12, Big 10, whatever they are, offenses that can't score. Because the rest of the Big 10, Big 10, Ohio State's on the team in the Big 10 that can score. The rest of them are lucky they can get 30 points at best on a given day.
Yeah.
He was at 9 overtimes in that last game, but with Penn State,
God, it was terrible.
And you only, come on, really? so you don't know with Ohio State. So I think we're the only two teams that can beat each other is Alabama and Georgia. Both are still capable. But right now, again, if I had the edge, I give to Georgia because they've looked, the eye test, Georgia has looked good week in and week out. Their fans are complaining about their teams giving up garbage touchdowns and their teams let people fly wide open. We are. So the edge right now goes to them. But hey, that's what I'm saying. That's why you play the game. Doesn't matter where you are now, where you'll be when you play that game. And so they still have a chance to improve. But and that's the thing, they need to improve. Now, with the Tennessee game, we saw a lot of busted plays, and that's why Tennessee got 24 points. You take away those busted plays, Tennessee's lucky to get 10. So, but the trouble is, those plays are there, and they keep being there way too often. And that's all Georgia will need, a busted play here and there. And all of a sudden they got the 30 points they need. So they're going to definitely have to improve on that. All right, guys. Great talking with you.
Hey, thanks. Thanks, Robert. And let's do it again, man. Roll Tide, my friend. Great call from my guy, Robert. All right, let's go right back to the phones. And as you hang out with us, like and subscribe to the Bama Insider YouTube channel. Who's this and where are you calling from?
This is Linda Gardner calling from Augusta.
How's it going?
Oh, unfortunately, I live here, but I'm a Roll Tide fan all the way. I have been since I was 16 years old. 50 years. Love it. Love it. Bear Bryant was awesome, and now Nick Saban is the bomb.
Yeah, no
And
doubt.
I'm just so proud of him today. I was so proud of him. And I continue. No matter where they lose or win, you got to be for them. You can't just dog them if they lose every now and then. It would be nice to be perfect, but nobody is. But anyway, it was not. I love. This is the first time I've been able to get in and talk to you guys, and I think it's great. And we're just going to keep on keeping ourselves, and we're going to be great through the rest of the year. And living in Georgia and Augusta, they better beat Alabama. Alabama better beat Georgia. I'll tell you what. If they don't, I'll have to hear. My roommate's a Georgia fan, so we go back and forth. But Alabama's the best and always has been. And everybody have a great evening and roll tide.
Roll Tide. Thanks for calling in. Yeah, look, Alabama's going to have to – they got to get to that Georgia game first, right? And then when they get there, I think that's a game that's going to be winnable for them. I really do. I think that they'll play to their opponent. And Georgia's having a great season. Georgia's the best team in the country, according to the polls. They haven't been beaten. They haven't really even come close to getting beat since their opening game against Clemson. So that matchup with Alabama could be one for the ages if we get there. Alabama's got 4 games ahead of them first. And if we talk too much about them, then Nick Saban will say it's rat poison. All right, let's go right back to the phone lines again on a Sunday night. Who's this and where are you calling from?
Nick, this is Mr. Ed. I'm a friend of Max Howell's, and I live in Atlanta, Georgia. Grew up in Alabama, and I've been over here 50 years, and among these Georgia fans. And this is, I try to teach them about real football. But so anyway, I agree with you on Georgia. I fear that going to Auburn more than playing Georgia, because Nick Saban can outcoach Kirby Smart every Saturday and twice on Sunday. He's proved it before. Kirby has breakdowns in the games, and so I think. And besides, Nick, let me ask you something. Georgia's riding high on. They got all their cred from beating Clemson 10-3, an unranked team right now, 10-3. Now, how impressive! I mean, is that what? Who else have they beat besides a better than average Kentucky team? They haven't beaten anybody else of any credibility.
Look, I'll tell you this right now. It's better for Alabama that they just feel like they're invincible, Georgia, because they're going to get into a game and it's going to be a rude awakening for them. I mean, maybe their win at Auburn, maybe that's the signature win. They did beat Kentucky, but it's still Kentucky to me. The Clemson game, we know who Clemson is now, right? And they didn't score a touchdown. They're going to have an issue dealing with Bennett and Daniels, who's going to be the quarterback when Daniels is back. That'll be curious. It'll be, interesting to see. But I think it plays into Alabama's hands if Georgia just continues to roll through everyone.
Yeah, I agree, Nick. And I've been down to Auburn several times. That's the game I'm concerned about, because you got the unknown factor of the officiating down there. I've seen weird officiating down there. Plus, everybody's talking about Bryce Young running and he might get hurt. I don't fear for him in his running capabilities, because he has awareness on the field and elusiveness, and I think he'll be all right. But in the pocket, if they don't protect him in the pocket, Auburn will break his legs. I've seen Auburn intentionally try to hurt people to get them out of the game, and they've done it. I've seen it happen. So that's the game I'm more concerned about, the game at Auburn. And backing up, I haven't been able to get in lately. I listen to your game, your calling show every week. It's great callers on here. I feed off of these guys that got a lot more insight maybe than I do. But I did go out to that game in Texas A&M. I made that trip to see a game at Kyle Field. Man, what an atmosphere that was! But here we go with Texas A&M. But in the game last night, through second and third quarters, Alabama was up, kind of took control, but it was shaky in the first quarter and then a little bit in the fourth quarter. But Alabama still prevailed by 28 points. That game, they were shaky the whole game out there in Texas A&M, and still only lost by a last-second field goal. So Alabama, these fans are getting all too uptight about, concerned about Alabama. Nick Saban's still in control. You can tell by his comments last night. He knows what needs to be handled. And but my insight is the right side of the line. Chris Owens, they need to use. Maybe he hadn't made personnel switches because they got a game coming up and they want to prepare. But now he's got an open week. I would hope he would put. I would put Chris Owens back at center because Dalcourt's had his weak moments too. The guard, Ignore or whatever, his number 55.
EQ.
He's kind of stabilized. Yeah, he's kind of stabilized from the Florida game. But Owens is, man, he's a weak link there. They need to put him back at center and put the kid from IMG Latham in. And I'm hoping they'll work on that over the off week here. And and also everybody's on Pete Golden too. Saban is loyal to his assistants. He's not going to throw anybody under the bus. Now he didn't throw O'Brien under the bus, even though he kind of said it without saying it. And you see the difference is on the goal line. They are running the football now when they're down there.
Mm-hmm.
And on Golden's, I think Golden is kind of a work in progress for Nick to work, bring him along. And you saw him in with the defensive guys on the sideline last night too. Nick was. So I don't. Golden is. I think he's a good skills level coach, and he's probably not as good as Kirby or Pruitt in making real time on the fly adjustment during the game. But there's where Nick Saban comes in. Nick will step in and make those. He did it last night. He did it against Texas A&M. So. But his recruiting, his recruiting's real good. So I'm not on the bandwagon for get rid of Pete Golden. I think we'll stay the course with him. Now O'Brien's going to take care of himself. He's probably looking for a job and will be out of there anyway. So
yeah, that's what I think.
We'll replace him. We can find another offensive coordinator. Nick will find one. So I think everybody's getting too anxious about this. I think Nick's got everything under control. We're just spoiled. Nick talks to the players about getting comfortable with winning. Maybe he needs to talk to the fans about it too, because man, these fans are going outrageous on these comments. We're losing one game and they're going crazy.
Yeah, I think that's Ed.
For the long haul. I've been around a long time, and this is we need to stay the course here and keep on focus, keep positive.
Yeah, Ed, great call. I think that you're exactly right on that front. I mean, it's I think that's why Nick Saban hasn't really been critical of this team at all anymore. I think that he realizes that after the loss that the assistant coaches are getting bombed, and that people are frustrated, and they'll never blame Nick Saban. But they will blame the assistant coaches, and he wants to keep this team positive and, and feeling good about themselves, knowing that they have a shot still. And that's all that you try to do. You just try to take advantage of shots. You just try to put yourself in position to win. And who knows, maybe Alabama figures out a way to do it. Maybe Bryce Young gets, super hot. Maybe, one of these freshman receivers emerges. It's a great question to ask that we'll see between now and Auburn. But I agree with you too, Ed, and thank you for the call. Roll Tide. I agree with you on the fact that Auburn game is going to be really tough. Circle that one. Know that Alabama's going to have to play a really good game to win. And, and so that's kind of where we're at right now with that. Guys, give us a thumbs up and subscribe as you hang out to the Bama Insider YouTube channel on a Sunday night. Let's go back to the phone lines again. And let's bring on DeMarco from Atlanta. So another call from Georgia. That's 3 straight. What's up?
What's going on, Mick? I didn't know you even recognized the number. How you doing, brother?
Good, man. Good to have you back on.
Yeah. So starting out tonight, man, I got my pick 6, my 6 nuggets, and we'll dive into those. I'm going to go ahead and line them out real quick. So number 1, Pete Golden, great performances last couple of weeks. Really impressed with that. The second pick we got, Bill O'Brien. We need to diversify our play calling a little bit, get a little bit more exotic there, in my opinion. Jay Will, he is trying to emerge as the number 1, but to be number 1, you've got to be reliable and you've got to be sure. I haven't really seen the hands be as consistent. Hence the first play of the game, he catches that, he's probably off to the races with his speed, but he drops it, of course. Offensive line, I'm liking what I'm seeing. Blitz pickup is great. Communication has gotten better. Bryce has been a little cleaner as of late. They're not quite at the level of that line we had last year, and I don't think that'll happen anytime soon. But pretty solid. Blocking on the right side probably needs to get a little better. Bryce Young clearly was the difference in why we won that game last night. I think if he doesn't have some of the plays he had, I'm not too certain how that turns out for us, even with all the talent that we have. And then lastly, Will Anderson, the Terminator, he's gotten a lot better. He's gotten a lot better. So, and then the last little rank and file, if you may, is Georgia. I like their offense. It's gotten better lately. The defense is great. Defense has always been great, but I think when they play higher octane teams, they're going to have a hard time scoring. I think they're going to be in a little bit of a debacle there. So I think it's the same old story with them. Great defense, elite defense, but I don't think they're going to be able to hold up once they get up against a team that can make play counts go up, because most teams, they don't sub their defensive backs. Those guys stay on the field. You know what I mean? Most teams don't really sub their linebackers. Those guys stay on the field. So the only real subs you see is either package changes or keeping the defensive front fresh. But that cornerback that's starting, he's out there from the first play to the last. So that's why offenses tend to come back late game, hence the Patriots versus the Falcons a couple years ago. So let's dive right into these picks. So I started off by saying Pete Golden, man, he is everything that I think Nick Saban wants in the defensive guy, calling those plays. I think people have to understand he doesn't construct the defensive game plan in a vacuum. Nick Saban knows more about football than all of us combined. So if he's saying Pete Golden is the guy, then Pete Golden is the guy. And if you look at the defense the last couple of weeks, the defense has been in the positions they need to be in to make the plays. The players are not executing. The players are busting coverages and busting. Those are mental errors. That's what we talk about. It doesn't matter if it's 100,000, 200,000 fans in the stadium. You have a job to do. There's a man in front of you. Focus on what you need to do. So that's not on Pete Golden. I do think his first couple of years, he had the defense a little bit, overcomplicated. There was a lot of verbiage, right? Reuben Foster kind of talked about this a while back. He said when Pruitt and Kirby were there, they ran 4 or 5 plays, but they ran those 4 or 5 plays to absolute perfection. And I think that's what made the difference, because guys can play fast, they can play hard, they can be proactive instead of reactive, right? And then Sark, I think Sark made things great offensively for us. Whereas Bill O'Brien, I like that he uses a lot of different formations, but there isn't a lot of dressing on that salad. You know, one thing about Sark, he could run a simple concept, but it was what he did pre-snap and the setup plays he used before that really confused the young gentlemen. He found a way to confuse young men and position this offense to be successful and take advantage of the talents of those guys. And he knew who maybe wasn't involved in the offense too much, and he knew how to dial it up to get those guys involved. So I really love that about Sark. And I think O'Brien could take a few notes from him. And like I said, Jay Will, he just has to get better. He has to get better with those hands. Great, I love him, but I think he's got to get better with those hands. I don't even know where he'd be if he hadn't transferred, so I'm definitely thankful about that. And then the O-line, you know, like I said earlier, I'm not going to say that I want J.C. Latham at right tackle and then Owens needs to go back to center because, again, Doug Marrone, Coach Saban, and those guys know more about football than all of us combined. So if they haven't made that switch yet, there's probably a reason. They see the practices. All we see is guys hitting the equipment. So we would never know, in our opinion. And then you got Bryce Young, like I say, great. He's elite. He's everything we needed him to be. Without him, I don't know where we'd be. And obviously, Will Anderson, he's elite as well. I think he needs to get more pass rush moves. I think he's great at what he does when he can just run and go fast and when they can scheme him open to a sack. But I'd love to see him get some moves. I'd love to see him, work on the spin move and some things of that nature. But back to that UGA talk, there's only one coach I've ever heard Nick Saban say that he doesn't want to play, and that's Kirby Smart in UGA. So if there's anybody in this chat that thinks that UGA is going to just lay down, no. Kirby Smart has had Nick Saban's number dang near every time they played each other. The only reason we beat them the last time we beat them in 2018 and got the championship is because 2 on second to 26, and then he came in. But they were beating the socks off of us. They were dominating us, right? So I'm not going to sleep on that. So what do you think about some of those things, Nick?
Yeah, a lot of great points, man. I mean, and very organized. If I was like a grad student professor, like I was back in the day, I would have given you an A on presentation, man. Like you came in and kind of went over everything. You did it so well. Look, I agree that Georgia's tough. Nick Saban says that, hey, look, I don't want to play these guys. It's a rough game. Yeah. I just feel like Alabama will rise to the occasion against Georgia. Even if Georgia's better, and they probably are. I'm curious to see what Georgia does when they play Tennessee. I want to know what Tennessee's defense and offense do against Georgia, because that's going to be a measuring stick. This game against Florida, what's going to happen there? I know it's in a neutral site. But at the same time, I want to see – I'm still not sure what Georgia is yet. I think Georgia – and I picked them to win the national championship at the beginning of the season. I think they're a great team. But just because they have the best players and the most experienced players and all that stuff doesn't mean you're going to win. They haven't figured out how to do that yet.
Right. No, I agree. I think the thing that I when I watch Georgia, first of all, they got set to get in a quarterback. We beat that team a year ago, right? So what I'm saying when I see them is, and we had the caller before was talking about kind of how they win. It's like how we won in the past. But if you really pay attention, football defense doesn't win you championships anymore because the rules, the speed of the game is all tailored towards offense. And I think that's more so business than anything, just, sales and, marketing, the product on the field. It's more marketable that way anyway. But I think when I watch Georgia, I'm not exactly sold on them either. I love the defense. The defense that, and while we're on it, I want to say this. People don't even take into account what Alabama's defense did to Tennessee yesterday. They held that team to nearly 20 points less than what they get. And that team ran tempo like they always did. Yeah. And outside of a few times where Josh Jobe is looking at the defense to get a call, so that's not a bust. And then you have a situation where the tempo got Jordan Battle out of position. And when they got the first touchdown, he didn't squeeze down. That's really tempo and maybe mental error. But outside of that, this defense is rising to the occasion. Pete Golden has these guys trending right at the right time. And when you look at Georgia, yes, they have a great defense, but they don't have an X factor at QB1. That's what you've always been proven to need as of late to win a championship. So I agree with you. I'm curious to see what Georgia does against these teams. However, I do think it probably would be more favorable for us when we do match up with them, like you said earlier, that they are undefeated. Yeah. They're, being patted on the back and told how good they are because they are not used to that. We are. And we've got Nick Saban. And I think we will be just trying to be, like I said, we've got great guys on our team. Toa and Christian Harris, they need to fill the lanes, play a lot harder. And they did that a little bit last night. You got a chance to see it. Play physical downhill. And I think we will be where we need to be as a complete team. The Texas A&M, like you said earlier, we just had a lot of mental errors, and we, at a stretch in the game, we were beating them like 28-0, 28-7. So I think, like I say, we'll be just fine. I like our chances against pretty much everybody we play. If we beat Georgia, I think we'll be national champions again. Oklahoma doesn't look to be anything solid. Ohio State's defense is, as Nick Saban would say, you can run through them like shit through a tin horn. So I think we'll be just fine, man.
Hey, DeMarco, thanks for the call, man. Roll Tide. Nicely done.
Yes, sir. All right, brother. Talk soon.
All right, talk soon, man. Thank you. All right, guys, let's go back to the phone. That was a great call there. Like and subscribe, hit the bell as you hang out with us here on a Sunday night. Who's this and where you calling from?
Yeah, this is Mike in Tuscaloosa. Can you hear me?
Yeah, gotcha. What's up, Mike?
Okay. Here's something that a lot of people are not saying. They didn't say it last night on your show, and they haven't said it tonight. Here's something that people, when they talk about Georgia and the situation with Georgia being able to beat Alabama, here's what people are not looking at. Kirby Smart, he saw, even though Texas A&M, if they played Alabama best out of 2-3 games, Alabama will win two of the three. But what Kirby Smart saw is Texas A&M beat Alabama, and he knows that he has a better team than Alabama. Don't you agree that Georgia is the better football team than Texas A&M?
Oh yeah, no doubt.
So Kirby Smart already knows that. That's what people are not mentioning. Kirby Smart says, well, if Texas A&M can beat Alabama, I know I got a better defense and I got a better offensive squad, then why can't I beat Alabama? Then he sees that this being his year to put it all together. You know, they've been so close the last couple of years, and this might finally be the year that they put it together. But I want to say one quick thing right quick before I get back to Alabama. For all, that one guy was saying that Alabama's fans are spoiled. I like to tell all the Alabama fans, because I'm an Alabama fan, how'd you like to be Clemson right now? Clemson was in the championship series last year, and you see how they are doing. I think I like Alabama's winning record than what Clemson has going on right now. So all these people that are crying about Alabama losing to Texas A&M, just put yourself in Clemson's place.
Yeah,
That's
look, Mike, Nick Saban, what he's been able to do year in and year out. I don't know that this is one of his best teams. This team kind of reminds me of the year, not at quarterback, but just overall. They remind me of the year that Blake Sims was the QB, and they won the SEC that year. They lost to Ohio State in the college football playoff. But, because there were holes, you would see good stuff, bad stuff. They still found ways to win. They were still tough to beat. And eventually they lost in the college football playoff, right? But with that said, I agree. I mean, even when you don't have your everything lined up and you lose all these guys to the NFL and first round picks and this and that, Nick Saban's still really hard to beat.
Oh yeah. Okay. Let me say one last thing before I hang up with you, and that's about the LSU game coming up in a week or two. Okay, LSU is a very dangerous team. A lot of people are chalking that up in the win column for Alabama in 2 weeks, but they're making a bad mistake because, first of all, you got a coach that's on his way out the door, which I don't think he should be fired, Orgeron, because a lot of those players that he had graduated in the NFL right now doing their thing, Joe Burrow and some of those receivers. Orgeron, I think he's getting a bad deal, but he'll probably get another coaching job with somebody else. But anyway, this is a dangerous game because LSU, another thing that people are not saying tonight, LSU, remember that LSU beat Florida, and remember how much of a hard time that Alabama had with the Florida Gators. So that tells me right there that LSU is capable of beating Alabama, judging on what they did against Florida, which was a win, and you saw the struggles that Alabama had. Well, Alabama, if they think that they're just going to walk onto the field and just beat LSU in 2 weeks, they better think again because they're a hungry football team, and plus they're going to be playing for their coach if they got any pride about themselves. They'll be playing for Orgeron to make him go out on that'd be a good way for him to go out of the ruin Alabama season. So I hope Nick Saban is telling all the kids this and not to look at LSU's record this year thinking that this is a weak team because LSU is a very dangerous team. And I thank you for taking my call tonight.
Hey, thanks, Mike. Appreciate it. Roll Tide, man. Good job. Yeah, look, I mean, you got to – every single game that Alabama plays, you got to be at your best. And I agree with him as I bring on Jarvis from Texas that Alabama better take LSU seriously, but I don't think I think that goes without saying. I think Alabama's going to be ready for LSU. Jarvis, what's up, man? How you doing? Roll Tide.
Yeah, roll tide to you, Mick. How are you doing today?
I'm good, man. I mean, you saw us last night. We had the Stogs, had a few post-game beverages, celebrated 15 straight. I'm feeling good about life right now, man.
Yeah, and one thing I will say, people fail to realize that was a good Tennessee team that we beat last night. Tennessee under Hendon Hooker at quarterback is a very dangerous football team. So the fact that we were able to beat them by 4 touchdowns is really very impressive, whether people realize that or not.
Oh, yeah, look, I agree. Hooker makes the difference. That offense is really designed to give Alabama trouble, and it has given Alabama trouble. And the better that Tennessee gets at recruiting players and running that offense, the harder it is for Alabama to continue this streak of consecutive wins against Tennessee, which I don't think when this thing's over that we'll ever have another streak this long. I just don't. I don't think there'll ever come a time where one team will beat the other 15 straight years. I mean, it's incredible.
Yeah, you said it. I mean, like you said, at this point, Nick Saban, there's nothing else for him to do. Like you said, I think he's just trying to extend the league so far that no one will ever even sniff any of these records. So I definitely believe you. One thing I do want to mention about Bryce Young, after studying him, over 8 games, I think Bryce Young is the perfect mixture of every one of Nick Saban's top quarterbacks. I think he's a little bit of Jalen, Tua, and Matt mixed into one, with a little Russell Wilson as well.
Look, I if you're asking me, I agree. I think he's more like Rodgers, just because of his ability to run. And then when you think he's going to run, he'll just throw the ball on you. And he's so accurate, like he's just constantly looking to get the ball into his playmaker's hands. He's smart. His demeanor's good. He just does. He's just a natural at the position, I think.
Yeah, and going back to Nick Saban, I think Nick Saban likes coaching him. Like I said, I think, like you said earlier, I think he's another Tua to Nick Saban. I mean, I know he doesn't probably really talk back that much. I know he's coachable. He's smart. He raised well. So I think he's another joy of a quarterback to have for Saban as well. And, I think that's really our biggest key to beating Georgia. If we make it to that game, I think Bryce Young's legs and knowing when to run and when not to run might be the X factor in a potential SEC championship.
That's a good point. I mean, I hope that we get to that. I feel like, kind of like Ed, our caller from Atlanta, said, I think the Iron Bowl is going to be a dogfight for this Alabama team. I just do. I'm afraid to say it. I hope I'm wrong.
No, speaking on that point, Nick, the way I goes with Auburn, they'll win out, and it'll come down to a winner-take-all Iron Bowl game in Jordan-Hare Stadium, where we have to finally get that monkey off of our back to get to where we want to be. I think Auburn's gonna win out. It's gonna come down to a 1-game SEC West battle for all.
Well, Kyle and I talked about this. You guys heard it. LSU, New Mexico State, Arkansas, and Auburn for Alabama. Auburn's ranked 18th right now. Let's see what Auburn's got left. I'm just curious. I haven't looked at it, so this is kind of the first time I've dug into Auburn's schedule here. But they've got Ole Miss. That'll be a good game. That's coming up this weekend. They got at Texas A&M, who's back to ranked again, ironically, after beating Alabama. They seem to have found something. They got to play Mississippi State and South Carolina. So, I mean, realistically, there's 2 wins in there at least, right? And then Ole Miss is home and Texas A&M's on the road, so maybe they split those. If they split those, Alabama could go into the Iron Bowl with win or lose. They're going to be the SEC representative in the in Atlanta. So right now the standings, Bama is 4-1 in the conference. Ole Miss is 3-1. Auburn's 2-1, and then Texas A&M's 3-2. Mississippi State 2-2, LSU 2-3, and then Arkansas 1-3. So really, It's Alabama and, well, Ole Miss too. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what happens this weekend. That's why I love this slate of games this weekend is going to be great, just to kind of see that Auburn Ole Miss game, and it's almost an elimination game. I think the team that loses that game is out.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think really that's that's true. And then it's going to become a tie between A&M, Auburn, and Ole Miss for that number 2 spot in the West.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I just have 2 more points for you, Mick, and I'll let you get to another caller. The first one is, like the last caller was saying, how lucky are we that we got Jamison Williams? I mean, without that guy on our team, I mean, we would have no deep threat whatsoever. And I'm not sure what type of team we would have without him. So I'm glad he came. And Henry Toto, I know it feels good for him to be on the winning side of this rivalry for once. And I will say for him, he did make a good decision to leave. You know, he elevated leaving Tennessee to come to the winning side. Jameson was already at Ohio State, so he went from top program. So he kind of made a lateral move. But for Henry, it feels good to see him. You know, he did make the best decision. And like I said, I'm glad that we got him and Jameson, and glad we have a bye week to heal up. And roll tide to you, Nick. I'll let you take another call.
Awesome. Great hearing from you, Jarvis. Roll tide, my friend. Thank you for calling in. Guys, like and subscribe as you hang out with us on a Sunday night. This is the Bama Insider YouTube channel. Kyle Henderson and me, Mick Gillispie, breaking it down for you, talking about the game. Alabama 52, Tennessee 24, 15 straight wins, off week. Can talk about the LSU game coming up, but it's great to talk to all you guys on a Sunday night. Who's this and where are you calling from?
Kevin Dallas, Georgia.
Hey, what's up, Kevin? Yeah.
I'll try to hit 5 quick bullets. The theme for the 21-22 year will be how the West was won. And I know that most of the listeners out there are too young to know about as far as how the West was won, but we're just going to bring it into 2021, 2022 vernacular. It's just simply that as far as this murderer's row in which we're going to have to go through this gauntlet. And as far as one thing I would ask when it comes to the Alabama fans, as far as those that's going to be at Bryant Denny for 3 of the next 4 weekends, is to do what College Station did, do the same as far as what took place as far as in Gainesville, and to make more noise. Because Bryant Denny need to be a true home field advantage. Also, it's going to be a team effort when it's all said and done, Mick. I mean, the upperclassmen, you know how I've stated ad nauseum how I feel about the upperclassmen. But the thing is, it's going to take a true team effort for Alabama to not only get to Atlanta, but also as far as to win a national championship this year. And the coup de grace as far as in 2 weeks. And that is put Ed Orgeron, put LSU out of their miseries. Number one, by getting a W.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be a star-studded recruit weekend as far as that first weekend, it's that first Saturday in November. So as far as, hey, off with their head, they said as far as in France during the French Revolution. And, hey, the same will have to be said as far as in Tuscaloosa. And then last but not least, as far as when DeMarco stated what he stated in reference to the University of Georgia, what I would say in reference to the University of Georgia would include all opponents. Respect all, but fear none. Just as, you know, some out there would say, okay, Alabama don't want Georgia. Trust me, Kirby don't want Alabama.
Yeah, no doubt. Hey, let me chew on a couple things that you said, because you definitely touched a nerve, man. I was at the game yesterday. Student section was loud. They were up. They were doing their shakers. They were screaming and yelling. I was sitting, you know, kind of around the turn in the lower level, and all of a sudden, everybody just sat down. I mean, it was like the first quarter. You know, you can't just stand up for third downs. Nick Saban said that the crowd, he felt like the crowd did a really good job. I didn't stay for the whole game. Obviously, I have to go to Westgate to do the post-game show. So I usually get out of there at about halftime if I go. But you know what? Our fans, we have just got to make more noise. You can't sit down in the first quarter. You got to make you just got to. You know, and the student section did a great job. And we did a great job on third downs, but I just think that we could make it a much better home environment. And you know, whether we're going to need that for LSU or Arkansas, I mean, that's here nor there. I mean, they're both good teams that could possibly beat us. But I think that Alabama, it will be okay with the noise level they had yesterday against those guys. But I love the fact that you said, it's kind of like off with their head. It's time this is time to end LSU's run. It's like when you watch wrestling and someone's like retiring, like Ric Flair's last match against Shawn Michaels. Shawn Michaels beat him mercifully. Like you can't send him out. You can't send him out like, hey, you just won. Put the guy on the road and send him out. I agree with you. I relentless. If I was Alabama, I would not call off the dogs. You got to recruit against those guys. You want to convince some of the players on their team maybe to transfer to your team. Alabama's lost some of those guys out in recruiting. And, who knows who's going to end up at LSU. But, you want to win the game. You want to win it convincingly. Besides that, they beat Alabama last time it was in Tuscaloosa in 2019. So, it happens. And you just don't want to see that happen again. So, yeah, really good points.
As always, pleasure to speak with you, Mick. You take care of yourself, you, Kyle, Tony, as well as Trey. And I just want all the listeners to know in parting, as far as the four aforementioned gentlemen, they're in charge of the bubble wrap petition. Because as soon as I get off this phone, they will be circulating a petition online to have Mr. Anderson and Mr. Young bubble wrap so they make certain that they can make it through the season, to make it to the SEC championship game as well as the playoffs and the national championship. Have a good evening, Mick. Look forward to speaking with you later on in the week.
Always great to hear from you. Thank you so much. Great call, as always, from Kevin out in Dallas, Georgia. All right, one more call tonight, guys, before we get out of here. Give us a thumbs up, like and subscribe as you hang out with us here on the Bama Insider YouTube channel on a Sunday night. Who's this and where you calling from?
What's up, Mick? This is Sean from Huntsville.
Hey, what's up, Sean?
Nothing much, man. I just wanted to call real quick. I know you guys trying to get out of here. I wanted to call and rebuttal it was maybe 2 calls ago. The young man said Georgia dominated us. I think his exact words were they dominated us and things of that nature. I wanted to call and give a real quick stat to the young man. I hope he's still listening in the chat. In the college football national championship, when we beat them 26-23, Georgia went up on us 13-0 at half. We scored 26 points in the second half to their 10. They scored 7 in the third, 3 in the overtime. That's the tour game. The second game, when we beat them 35-28 in the SEC championship, we scored 21 points in the second half to their 7. So if you want to say they dominated us the first half, I'll go with you on that. But clearly, when Coach Saban went in at halftime, made the necessary adjustments, not only our coach Kirby Smart, but we dominated them in both second halves of those games. Every Georgia fan knows that. So it's okay. I mean, it's fun to talk about Georgia, and that's great. But I agree with you 1,000%. We got a whole bunch of fish to fry before we get to Georgia. But I just wanted to correct the young man respectfully. They didn't dominate us. They dominated the first half and got whipped the second half in 2 games. And we're not even going to talk about the game in Tuscaloosa last year, because we all know how that goes.
Yeah, I forgot about that one. Sean, I'm glad you brought that up, because I was thinking about the last 2 times that Alabama played Georgia.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about, obviously the SEC championship game and the, in the Tua game, but I forgot about that old-fashioned butt whooping they took last year against Alabama.
Exactly.
They were feeling so good about themselves coming into that game, right?
I know, right?
And I love it. Just keep getting that big head. They just need to keep getting that big head.
No disrespect. Just wanted to, if you're gonna say somebody dominated us, respectfully, let me get my little argument in, and let's take notes and see. Let's see who's right.
I think
respectfully.
Sean, I want everyone to tell Georgia that they're the best team that's ever played college football.
Me too. I respect them. I respect Georgia, but I'll be one of the ones to tell you how great their defense is. This is what I always say. They're playing great. They're playing the best in the league right now. They're playing the best. But in the end of the day, if you really want to be specific and technical and nitpicky, they haven't played an offense in the top 40 yet. Not one. But I respect what they're doing. All you can do is play the teams on your schedule, and that's what they're doing. I respect it. But we're going to take care of our business. It was a great win last night. As always, things to clean up. We'll be fine. But listen, thank you guys for taking my call as usual. Shout out to all the chat. That's me in the chat, SPH Huntsville. Everybody like and subscribe. Love what you guys doing, and I'll continue to support.
Hey, Sean, it's always great to hear from you, man. All-American caller. No doubt about it.
Appreciate you.
Roll Tide, my friend. Great call from Sean in Huntsville. Great call from all of you guys tonight, and I really appreciate you being part of our show. Thanks for hanging out with us. As Kyle mentioned, tomorrow night at 6 o'clock, we'll have Monday Night Quarterback. We'll recap things. Tony Tsoukalas and myself, normally scheduled. I know there's some NFL football going on tonight that you guys are going to want to watch, but make sure you like and subscribe as you hang out with us here. That's how you say Roll Tide, man. Hit the bell, and we'll let you know what's going on with everything that concerns Alabama. Off week, Alabama resting up and kind of licking their wounds and then moving forward to take on LSU in one of these games where it's a rivalry game and it's an important game, but it's one that I think Alabama will take care of business. I'm not really overly concerned that LSU is going to beat Alabama, but they could if Alabama doesn't prepare and go into this ready to take care of business. But I think that's going to be the case. But we got 2 weeks to talk about that. So don't forget, we've got Nick Saban's press conferences. Obviously, tomorrow is going to be a little bit different with an off week, but Kyle said that he is going to talk, and we'll have that for you. And everything else that we got going on, we will do our best to get it up here for you. So I'm Mick Gillispie, and for Kyle Henderson and our entire crew, thanks for hanging out with us on a Sunday night, guys. Again, 52-24 Alabama over Tennessee. The Crimson Tide 7-1 going into their off week. And if they win out, they'll play in Atlanta. Still got a long way to go. LSU, New Mexico State, Arkansas, and then Auburn. And not in that particular order. All right, guys. Roll Tide, everybody. Good night.